Welcome to the West and North London podcast, where we sit down each and every week to answer your big Arsenal questions. I'm Caleb.
And I'm Tim.
Tim, it's another week of things happening in Arsenal land that are maybe, well, we'll talk about how big a deal they are. But it still feels like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, the big thing to happen. So I don't know what that's going to be, but I'm still waiting for it.
I think that's just the general case within soccer in general. I think everyone's kind of waiting for another shoe to drop. There's not a lot of news going around other than the Olympic games in which Sweden beat the US 3-0 in the women's Olympics.
Yeah, I think that caught everybody by surprise.
Did not catch me by surprise.
Not this guy.
Not this guy.
Well, that's there's at least one person in the U.S. that was happy about that. There's probably more, but I can say I know one.
Yeah.
So what drink do you have in your hand this week?
So I decided to crack open a special bottle. This is a bottle I bought pre-pandemic and has just been hanging out in my beer cellar for the last, year and a half, or actually more. I bought this in like August, so probably exactly 2 years. And it's a by Matchless, which was the other week, another one of my brewers. But it's a collab with Northworks Brewing, which is out towards the Mount Baker, and it is called "Where Is My Barley Wine?" And it is, as you can see, a barley wine.
Mm-hmm.
And it is an exciting 12.7%.
Ooh. Have you tried it yet?
So I have a small glass. I'm not sure I have not tried it. I opened it because it has a wax seal and I didn't want to try and get through the wax seal on camera. We'll see how much of this I can get through during the show. But let's... Oh. Mm-hmm. Oh God, that is delightful. It's they say it's aged in a multiple different amount of bourbon barrels, and it's just like I think you might hate it because it has no hops in it whatsoever, and it's all like caramel and raisins, and yeah, I'm in heaven right now. I'm glad I waited till right now to have this. And I'm going to have to let you talk right now because I'm in just like kind of a ecstasy.
I didn't hate the barley wine I had a few weeks ago. It was all right. It's just not something I would reach for in the summer generally. So I think I would circle back to barley wine more as like a winter ale sort of thing.
Yeah, I could see this as a really good winter ale, but right now, this is one of the best barley wines I've ever had. I'd been saving this for a while, and I don't know why I chose to pop it today, but yeah, it is definitely one of the better beers I've had in my entire life. So if you can find it, I don't think you can anymore, but the Matchless Brewing, Where's My Barley Wine?
How long has it been aging?
2000, so like summer 2019, so 2 years.
Okay. That's probably good enough. I don't know how you could probably age those for quite a while. All right. I've got one that I have not opened yet either. So I'm going to do that. I have a Hop Valley Operation Vacation IPA.
Mm-hmm. Oh, nice. I do like Hop Valley.
Yeah, somebody left a few of these around, or a few different ones at my house. So I'll be trying a few different variations from their summer mix pack. So we'll see if this one's any good. It's okay. I kind of was hoping for a little more bite to it. It's a little on the, it's a little light on the IBU. It's a 20. So I like it a little bit
Yeah, that's
stronger.
actually even lower than last week's beer for you.
Yeah. So I need to get back into the really hoppy, dank beers, but this is all right. It's just not what I'm looking for right now.
When they say vacation, what makes it a vacation? Does it have any fruity flavors to it?
Hmm. It's got the tropical accents. Yeah, is what they call it.
Yeah, tropical accents.
Yeah, and intense aromas of peach, citrus, and fresh pear. I think I'm just done with all the fruit in my beer. I, I like a little less
Yeah,
fruit.
no, I totally get that. Like I do like a stone fruit in my beer. Like I do love like a cherry flavor or a peach flavor. But as far as like actual just like fruit in the beer, like it depends. Like I mean, when it's hot and sunny outside, it's always nice. But
Okay, so Tim, you've got a Tim's bit for me this week. What is it?
well, with all of the talk about you know Emile Smith-Rowe re-signing, and one of the big things was and we're going to get very deep into this conversation, but one of the big things is that he asked for the number 10. So I wanted to know, if you were playing soccer, what number would you pick and why?
My go-to number whenever I'm creating a player on FIFA or anytime I need to pick a number is 17. Or right now, unfortunately, that is Cedric's number, so I'm not going to go out and get a number 17 jersey. I think I'm trying to think who it was before him, but I know previously Sanchez had 17. Was it a Wobie? I'm trying to remember who was 17 before that, but yeah, it's hasn't been an amazing number for Arsenal necessarily, but that would be what I would choose.
Why? What made you choose 17? What does that have for you?
It's just my lucky number. My birthday's on the 17th. I was my 17th year on this earth was a good one. So yeah, it's turned out to be a good number for me overall.
Excellent.
Yeah, nothing too exciting.
Someday we'll have to hear about what your 17th year entailed, but I won't put you on the spot right now. But,
Oh yeah,
yeah.
someday I might need more drinks.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a number 2, but that's because I played a number 2. I was always a left back playing, and yeah, that's just always been my number. Even when I've been pushed into midfield, I always chose number 2 because that's kind of my home.
Nice. I think that is any of the low numbers are solid numbers. I think 17. I feel like is one of those ones.
I was surprised.
Go ahead.
No, I was surprised you picked 17 because like that's generally a bench number, as it were. It's not necessarily a starting number.
No. But there is those times where, like I said, I think Sanchez was a 17. I'm trying to look. Oh yeah, it was a Wobie. So a Wobie wasn't necessarily a locked in starter by any means. But yeah, it hasn't necessarily been a bench number for Arsenal. But yeah, it's not as glamorous as a 9 or 10 or something lower.
Yeah.
But these numbers,
I mean, like,
they just...
number 2 is not very glamorous to begin with anyways.
Yeah, I feel like you're... It's more about what you do, not what number you're wearing.
Exactly.
All right, so let's get into the meat and potatoes of this week's episode. There's been very little that's happened since last time we talked to you, but the big news is Emile Smith-Rowe signing a 5-year extension on his contract. I didn't look at the numbers as far as what he's making or anything like that, but anytime these guys come up through the academy, you're playing with house money. You just got to worry about that, getting them paid the right amount, and you don't have to worry about transfer fees. It's a beautiful thing. It's exactly what we should be doing.
Yeah, I'm very much okay with this extension. As I said, it's playing with house money. Plus, I think the number 10 spot is a spot we need to be concentrating quite a bit on, and him. Hence the question that we were talking about earlier. Him stepping up and saying he wants to be the number 10 for Arsenal, I think, is a positive thing. Is he the number 10 for right now? Next year, I guess we'll see. But I'm hopeful that he can develop and be that player. But adding those extra years of contracts is just extra security in case we need to move him on.
Yeah, I guess it asks the question now: is his career trajectory over the next 5 years, like in that time frame, could he be the number 10 that we want him to be? And what is it that we want out of a number 10, I guess? Because to me, he's interesting and he has a lot of potential to be that sort of player. But when we've watched him play in this last half a season, I wouldn't have said, "Oh, that's our number 10 right there. That's our guy." So I think the fact that he wants that and has asked for it, I think that shows a lot of courage, I guess, and that's something I want out of our number 10 is to have that confidence. And then I think the things that he has shown on the field are definitely like the tip of the iceberg. I feel like he does have a lot of development. He has the potential to be really good, but it is just the grass shoots, like not quite the full product. We're going to get there, and I'm glad that he's going to do it with us. And I think that is an asset. He could be a great asset if he doesn't work out with us. So I think like giving him that 10, locking him up for 5 years, those are all positive things, and I don't see that hurting Arsenal. And if they do find somebody else that wants to play that role, I don't think it hurts that he has that number. I just feel like it can. The only negative might be if he feels pressure from wearing that number.
But I mean, you say that if he feels pressure for wearing that number, but if he's asking for it, I think he's willing to take on a little bit of that pressure, which I think is a good thing. I think it's weird because when you look over who's worn the number 10, and not just as a number, but who has taken on that role as a number 10 in Arsenal history, you have, my favorite player of Arsenal history, Dennis Bergkamp, and you have after that taking on, like Azul. And so there is a decent amount of expectation, I think, from the fan base of what that means as a position and what that is. And it's a combination I think he can have. I don't think he's going to be the finished article this year, even. I think he has a lot to step up to, but I am very excited that he's willing to take that responsibility and to try and actually, I don't know, play up to those ghosts of Arsenal past.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to live up to, and that's okay. I think it's okay that there's that pressure. I guess my fear would be that he feels it too much and lets it affect his game, but we don't really know. Some people really thrive under that sort of pressure and do step up their game to try to meet expectations. So I think it would be a different situation if Arteta approached him and said, "I want you to be my number 10," versus him asking for it. I think him wanting it, that desire, is a very different situation. So I think that is pressure he's inviting rather than something he should be nervous or afraid of. I think he's meeting it head on, and so that's more of a good sign in my mind that he won't buckle under that pressure because he knows what he's getting into, and I think Arteta was quoted as saying like he explained to him what that entails, like what that means when you take on the 10 and the problems and the positives that can come from that. But also that he's ready to support him in that journey. So I think that's I think the fact that Arteta appreciates that sort of gumption and wants to let that blossom, I think that's a positive thing. And it's in my mind the main fear around it would be that it's the fan expectations that come along with that, and that's not necessarily anything he can control. All he can do is go out and play his best, and then the fans are going to decide what they want either way. But I think that it does. I think it does add pressure from a fan perspective in the sense that he is maybe not what people expected going into this window as like the creative midfielder that many people were clamoring for. I don't think anybody was like, oh yeah, we already got it. It's Emile Smith-Rowe. I think most people are like, we got to go out and find somebody. So I think there is still that desire, and what I don't know if that's a top priority for Arsenal now. That may be something that they're able to kind of wait and see how the market plays out, or push that to another window. It is a thin area, so I would personally want to see them go out and get somebody else to supplement what Emile Smith-Rowe brings. I hate to keep going back to the Odegaard but he is somebody that worked well with what Emile Smith-Rowe does, and if they can find somebody like that can kind of dovetail with what he does, I think that would be the ideal situation, because putting all of that creative weight onto Emile Smith-Rowe might be a little too much too soon.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two parts that you brought up just there, and the first part is the pressure that he'll be under. And I think it does increase the pressure to ask for that number, but at the end of the day, it is just a number, and who really gives it? Like, they could be wearing alien signs, and I wouldn't really care what what that was. But and I also think, as far as pressure, there are players much higher up on the pressure hierarchy that are going to be more fans' ire. I think Aubameyang is definitely someone that the fans are going to be much more worried about than Emile Smith-Rowe. And to be honest, I think there's going to be a lot more pressure on Saka coming into this season, as far as, or pressure, expectations. I guess they're two sides of the same coin in some ways. I think if Smith-Rowe underperforms, whether or not he's wearing a 10, I don't think it's going to be as big of a deal as some of the other players we have. And on the other side, as you're talking about this idea of trying to bring in, more players, like I think we do want to bring in more players. Obviously, we always want the best, but I always get nervous when we're just always looking to bring in new players as opposed to develop from within. I don't think, I know it's the new modern view of what a soccer team is, which is you're just always buying the next new hot thing, and there's always a player you want to buy. But I think if we put some just, I don't know, resources into promoting from it within, which is what Emile Smith-Rowe is a perfect example of promoting within and developing from within and giving patience, I think you can get your own type of reward from that. And we do see that with Saka,
Yeah, I just wonder if Emile Smith-Rowe gets injured. I know that I can see in my mind like what would need to happen to accommodate for that, and we have the players to make it work. You kind of just shuffle Saka into that role, or somebody else. I think it is kind of a Saka would be the closest to what Emile Smith-Rowe does. I guess that's concerning in the sense that you're pulling other players out of their best positions to accommodate for that. And so I'd like to see them get another player in that creative midfield role that could back up Emile Smith-Rowe if he's our 100% front runner for that position, then he should be playing that week in, week out as much as he can. But I think across the board, you should have players that are being pushed by the players behind them or supplemented by the players around them. I don't want there to be like a void if he is unable to perform or unable to play a given week or whatever it may be, because we don't have the personnel to do a like for like switch. Like we saw what happened with Tierney not being able to play and all the shuffling that had to go on to make that team work. And it pulled Xhaka out of his best position. So I would hate to see that happen. Emile Smith-Rowe has definitely had his share of injuries. Started last season off with a shoulder injury, which really, it was only until the Boxing Day match when he was like fully healthy and ready to come into the games. So I'd hate to see us put him in that number 10 role and then not really have a plan B or somebody behind him to push him a little bit. So I don't think it necessary. You don't have to go get an Odegaard level player, but I would like to see somebody come in who has some creativity that can push and challenge Emile Smith-Rowe a little bit, but maybe not necessarily at that level. Just somebody who would slot in at a few games here and there and have some coverage. So maybe signing Emile Smith-Rowe lets us say, hey, we don't have to go break the bank on that position. We can put that money into Ben White, or I don't know. I just don't. I have a harder time making the case for a James Maddison sort of signing as a creative midfielder, because that sort of money just seems crazy when you've just given the number 10 to Emile Smith-Rowe.
Oh, definitely. And I know we're going to address a question about our deepest needs, and it's going to sound very hypocritical to me from what I just said here. But I think the thing I take out of this is that I love the fact that we have two young players that are taking up positions and are making a strong argument for starting, and that putting them to these long contracts is great. We saw that was it 2 years ago? Time gets very squishy when we signed Saka to his long-term contract. And once we did that, we protected his value so well. And, his value has just only skyrocketed since we put him through that contract.
Yeah, I was looking at that before we started recording. Emile Smith-Rowe is only currently valued at about $20 million. And I think that's he has so much potential in a position of need for the national team. I mean, like he's kind of the next Grealish sort of player, I think. And so that is certainly a role that the national team needs. So I think he'll be in that conversation for England. I think he's kind of just on the cusp of making that same sort of breakout that Saka has made in the past couple seasons. So I think more game time and certainly more exposure will see his value grow immensely over the next couple years. So by the time you're at that, you're 3 years into this next contract, I think you're looking at a $40 to $50 million player as opposed to a $20 million player. So by the time we have to make the decision on re-signing or selling, he's going to certainly double his value in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, and as we look at a lot of our other players that we're looking to offload, he's definitely a player I want to hold on to. Like when you're comparing it to like Nketiah or any of the other players that are kind of coming out of that generation. Mm-hmm. I think we found the two that are going to stick with us.
Yeah, I think that the cream has definitely risen to the top here, and that's not to talk bad about Nketiah. It's more about what they have done with the chances they've been given. And Nketiah hasn't been bad by any means. I just don't think he's risen to the occasion and been consistent enough with the minutes that he's been given. I know that is tough when you're in and out of the lineup and coming off the bench and that sort of thing. So it is not easy to make that leap into the starting lineup. That is a challenge, especially when you've got big players in front of you. It helps when you have when you're in a position of need and you come in and all of a sudden it's like, oh well, compared to what we used to have, you're way better. So it's much easier. But when you're being compared to Lacazette or Aubameyang or something, then Nketiah's got a lot more work of his work cut out for him.
And speaking of Nketiah, and I know this is not on our running order, so sorry to throw you a
anything you want to talk about is fair game.
I'm generally not one to worry about transfer windows as far as like players coming in. I tend to be pretty chill. But what are your feelings about the players going out right now, or the lack of players going out?
No
are
players.
you are you getting worried at all?
I'm a little concerned about the Xhaka deal. I thought that was going to be an easy one to get done after the Euros were over, and it seems like it's gone radio silent a bit. And he's still traveling. I think he's not quite back from his post Euro vacation. So I will hope. I'm going to hope that that's one of the reasons it's gone a little quiet. I'm hoping it's not because they've gotten cheap on us and don't want to pay the 20 million that Arsenal is asking. But I do think Arsenal need to kind of stick to that and see if they can get somebody to step up for him, because he did have a good Euros. He has been a solid player for us, and he's still important to us. I would keep him another season if nobody wanted to take him, because it's certainly a position that we're not quickly filling. You know, I'm glad that they went out and got Sambi and that there's going to be a player for the future there. But you know, Xhaka at least provides a solid partner to Partey. So you know, if we had to keep him around and try to get more out of him, I wouldn't hate that idea, but he wants out. I don't want a player that doesn't want to be here necessarily. So that's the other side to this is, do we want a disgruntled Xhaka running around our midfield when he would rather be in Italy? And I'm not sure. It's kind of feeling like the whole market is kind of in the same boat. It's not just Xhaka or Bellerin or whoever it is that we're trying to get rid of. There's a lot of teams that are trying to get rid of players, and for some reason, there's not a huge buyer's market. You know, there's the teams that can spend money, and then a lot of guys will probably end up on loans towards the end of the window, which is not ideal, but we need to take what we can get in some of these situations just to make room on the roster. Like I want to still be able to go out and get one or two players and not have other players just sitting around. Like you can't have a Reece Nelson or Cedric or whoever these deep bench players are that are not going to see the light of day this season without Europa League. We just got to clear out some of this extra stuff. And I do think it's going to be a lot of loans. So if we can get a couple player sales, I think that would be ideal. But it is making me a little nervous that it's not moving quite as quickly as I would have hoped.
Yeah. And I mean, I have been kind of saying that I've been less optimistic that these players are going out that everyone's had expected to go out, and there is plenty of time for the window to open up. But it's just like, if you look at the overall health of the window right now, it always is the case that you have these big spenders spend money and the money comes in, and then like adding oil to a machine, all the gears turn and these players start moving. But you're looking at the usual spenders, and they're not going to be spending any money. Barcelona's looking to drop players. Madrid's looking to drop players. Inter's looking to drop players. Milan is looking to drop players. Like I can't see where money's getting put into the system in which these other teams are going to be able to spend. And like I think it's going to be a very big recession. So I think we're going to, like I've said this before, and I know that people have laughed me out, but I think we're going to be holding on to some of these players that we thought we were going to get rid of. Like I think Xhaka is a great example of that I think there's a strong possibility he's going to be playing with us next year. I guarantee you, William, is going to be here next season. I think there's a lot of these players that we thought we could, or we would hope that we could get rid of. They're just going to be staying on the team.
And Willian is just another one of those players that is trapped by his huge wages. I think there would be people in for him if they didn't have to pay him so much, but Arsenal made that another dumb error in overpaying to bring him in. And I don't see an easy out for him unless Arsenal are willing to bite the bullet and cut him loose. You know, at either a cut rate transfer or just outright void his contract and pay him off.
Yeah,
because I don't. He's just gonna take up a bench spot. I just don't know what he's gonna do for us this season.
I wouldn't be surprised if he's playing with the reserves. That we just we're not putting him on a spot for the first team, and we just have him in the reserves. It's just a lot of money to have for a reserve player.
I would absolutely love to be wrong about him, and I kind of felt like that about Ozil towards the end too. It was just like I was just waiting to be wrong because it's another player that has looked really good in the past. You know, I think I would have even a couple years ago I would have been okay with a Willian signing. I don't think anybody expected the drop off that he has had.
Not any. I am going. You can rewind the tape. I hated this signing from the start. I thought it was one of the worst signings we've done, and I don't say that with any glee. I want to be proven wrong, and I hope that this next year somehow Willian picks up what he's doing. But that signing had all the earmarks of a horrible signing. Player over 30 for way too much money on wages, and yeah. We're getting exactly that.
Who? Let me try that word again. Who do you think between Aubameyang and Willian, two players in their 30s, maybe slightly past their due date? Which one of them do you think, all things being equal, which one of them plays their way out of their slump?
I mean, I think that's a fun question. I think Aubameyang had a lower ditch to dig himself out of. Mm-hmm. That I think the thing about Willian is his ditch is very, 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 very deep. Whereas Aubameyang still scored some goals for us. You can still see the flashes of brilliance. He's only a year off of a really, really, really good year for us. And even in preseason, you're seeing him on the first goal against Millwall, and I know we're going to get to that game, but he had that. It turned out to be kind of an assist, but it would have been a brilliant goal if it went in.
Yes.
So of the two, I have more time of day for Aubameyang, and I feel like he is more likely to pull himself out, though I'm a little worried about him, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's easier as a person who actually scores goals to make a measurable. I don't know if Willian's going to suddenly completely become a goal scorer. I mean, he's always been more of a creator than a goal scorer, but he did have that in his toolbox before, and I haven't seen it recently. So I can't remember if he knows how to score, but I think it is easier to measure a return to form when you're looking at goal scoring versus whatever it is Willian's been doing.
I mean, and to be fair to Willian, on this, I wanted to say West Ham, but it's not West Ham. It is Millwall. On the Millwall game, Willian was involved in the third goal. And so if you're going to use preseason as a judge, both of them are showing signs of life. So I don't know, but yeah,
against crap competition though, so we can't
exactly.
can't say too much about it. Yeah, so I don't know where we were at before we started talking about this. We were talking about Emile Smith-Rowe at some point here. So what are your feelings about that position now? Is that his and his alone, or do you think Arsenal will look to the market if there's anybody available?
I'm trying to skirt around this question because we have a topic about it later on the agenda. But I will say that I think the number 10 position, whether or not Emile Smith-Rowe has the number, is a position of need for us. And it's for a lot of the same reasons that you mentioned earlier, which is that at least for depth, it would be awesome to have another player. I also don't think Emile Smith-Rowe is necessarily ready to jump to the big time without a safety net.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to find some sort of creative midfielder that like slots into that position. That, I mean, yeah, we always go back to Odegaard. I think Odegaard last year was the exact type of signing we need for this year, and I don't think we can afford to buy the player that we need for that position. But if we can get another quality loan like that for that position, I think that's the direction we need to go with it.
Yeah. And there was a rumor going around this week, and I was ready to buy into it because I want it to happen so bad. There was somebody that writes for and is supposedly a very high tier person in the know for Real Madrid, and they were saying that they felt like Odegaard was kind of feeling detached from the team. Take from that what you will. You got to wonder with the troubles that Barcelona and Real Madrid are having, they're going to have to loan players out at the very least if they can't find buyers. And I just feel like for all the trouble that they're in, even if they're selling players at a cut rate, and it's like all the, that there just aren't that many people who can pay for the players outright. I think there's going to be a lot of loans with options and loans with obligations to try to get their books right. And at least for Real Madrid, they have a lot of midfielders. They have people older than Odegaard. They have people younger than Odegaard. They have pretty much every age profile in their system for midfielders. So I could see if they get closer to the season and they need to make some moves and Odegaard wants to play, I think it would benefit all parties to get him another loan. I just don't know if I feel like he kind of got a little bit of flack from the Real Madrid fans for wanting to leave and get playing time rather than fight for his spot. And so doing that again would only further that impression that he's not willing to fight for his spot. But I can't remember where I was writing this. It might have been on Reddit, but basically, where else would Odegaard be appreciated for his leadership qualities, for some of the things that, he's just not even going to be in the picture for at Real Madrid. He would be like perfect fit for Arsenal. Like the things that he does won't even get noticed at Real Madrid, honestly, but he would be a superstar again if he had a full season with us.
I think I 100% agree with you with that idea. Makes 100% sense. I think one of the dangers is to fall into the trap of Madrid doing anything that makes 100% sense.
Yes.
That club is a very interesting club. I think also I'm very wary of any type of rumors around both Madrid, Barcelona, any of the major Spanish clubs, because they just have like a press cycle that runs so crazy
Mm-hmm.
that you have to have all these rumors churning all the time. They have two newspapers that are there just writing about Madrid and Barcelona. So like they have to daily come up with these new ideas. So I'm always very loath to believing in the rumors. Everything I've heard from the sources are that Madrid is really trying to do the younger rebuild, and that Odegaard is definitely in on their plans. That being said, you hit the nail on the head. I think it would be the smartest moves for all party involved to come to a reasonable solution to get Odegaard to Arsenal.
Mm-hmm.
I think Madrid is probably going to overvalue what Arsenal would ever pay for Odegaard. They've already invested way too much into that kid, and I can't see a sale going through. Again, it'd be something I'd love to be proved wrong, but everything I've read and seen is that's not going to happen. So I've already kind of left him to that scrap pile of dreams that we've had.
Yeah, I think it's hard to gauge the level of desperation. You know, it looks like they would be dying to get rid of players, but you would think that almost every season because of their just wacky wage structure, and it doesn't make sense on paper, but somehow they make it work.
I mean, they're dying to get rid of players, but they're like the thing about Madrid that's very like it's a very different ecosystem from being Arsenal. You know, we've not been in the top four for years now, and while that's grating and not exciting for us, we're not flipping over cars and lighting them on fire. If Madrid dropped out of the top two, like for multiple years, like their entire fan base would just destroy the club. So they need to, while selling players, keep competitive, and it's this weird balance that they have. And I think Odegaard strikes that perfect balance of a player that's young enough that they've developed that can put them around that top two spot. So I would be happy but shocked if he moved.
Yeah, I wonder, and I know there is a lot of respect for him from Arteta and the other club leaders. So I wonder how long they will keep that iron in the fire, so to speak, and see how that plays out. I'm sure there are other targets in mind.
Yeah.
But maybe it's not the highest priority for them right now. And they, because of Emile Smith-Rowe, they can afford to kind of sit back and see how that plays out a little bit more. I mean, because it could be that he's ready for another half-season loan again, you know, because he might go into this thinking he's going to get a lot of playing time, and then when reality hits, he's going to be sadly disappointed if that doesn't come to fruition for him. Because I know he's not going to want to ride the bench. So if he's not playing, there might be an appetite for it again, and that might just have to wait till later, though.
I mean, it could also be the case, and I mean, this is just rife speculation from random person here, but that Arsenal can wait to run out his contract and sign him on a free, which would probably be a much better economic choice. And I think that's something that Odegaard, I think, might be very willing to do, which is run out his contract in Madrid and get a good payday, as opposed to that money going to the Madrid coffers.
Yeah, I'm not sure where he's at on his or what his contract situation is right now. But if it's more than 2 years, that ship will sail for sure. Yeah, beyond the Odegaard rumor I heard, there has not been a whole lot going on as far as the rumor mill goes. It sounds like this Ben White thing is all but done and could be announced as early as this week, but we've been saying that for several weeks now, so who knows?
Again, don't count your chickens before they hatch. I've been in this Arsenal thing before.
Yeah. So. That at this point that has been pretty much confirmed from Ornstein and Fabrizio Romano. So I of course, if he fails his medical, that would be like the last hurdle. But unless that happens, it sounds like it's a done deal. As far as the Brighton and Arsenal side of things goes, and it sounds like Ben White's personal terms are all sealed up. So if it's just down to the medical, we'll just wait until that announcement comes. I don't think there's going to be a gazump from another team, but you never know. Maybe somebody else is desperate to pay $50 million for a center back right now.
As I say, I never really care until the Arsenal official page puts it on, because it's been many times before where I've been disappointed.
Yeah. The rumor mill is pretty quiet otherwise, and it is a weird window. I just don't know how long it's going to take for things to shake loose. I don't know if they will shake loose. It sounds like, one of the big dominoes was Holland, and that was pretty much down to Chelsea, I think, going after him. But it sounds like he's going to stay in Germany another season. So if these big players aren't in play, then that grease never hits the machine. It never really trickles down to anybody else. So we'll have to wait and see. There's lots of big names out there that could move, but there's only a handful of teams that are actually able to spend. So if there are scraps for Arsenal to go get when things start shaking loose, we'll have to wait and maybe until the final weeks of the window for that to actually happen.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I know with the Holland situation, Dortmund was pretty adamant of the price, and they have, I believe, another year on his contract, or like 2 years, so that like they don't have to sell this year on it. And yeah, if the money's not right, it's not happening. And I think it's going to make for a very interesting end of transfer window day. Mm-hmm. I think there's going to be a lot of wheeling and dealings, as you mentioned. I think there's going to be a lot of loans last minute, just to even just free up space on the squads. So we'll see what happens. I do feel, besides if the Ben White goes across the line, I think Arsenal has one more signing in them somewhere, but we're just going to have to see where the chips fall.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that in a little bit, like where their chips should fall. But before we get to that, let's talk most recent preseason match, which would have been, I guess, one of the U.S. games. But since that did not happen, they did a behind closed doors preseason match with Millwall, which apparently was played somewhere, or shown online somewhere. I did not catch it at all, but did see some highlights, and it looked like a lot of players playing at half speed. So take all these goals with a big grain of salt. But as you alluded to earlier, there was a nice attempt by Aubameyang at a bicycle kick. And unfortunately, that didn't go in, but it did lead to a goal from Chambers. So that started things off positively, and followed by goals from Lacazette, Pepe, and Balogun. So everybody was hitting. Millwall did end up scoring one on I think off a corner, which again, maybe concerning. Don't know about the set piece coach yet. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, like I said, everybody was kind of walking through this game from the highlights I saw. So it wasn't super high competition from Millwall.
I mean, it's exactly why when people were freaking out about us losing to, was it Rangers, one of the Scottish teams we lost to, and we drew with the other. I forget which one. And I'm like, these players are all walking. Like these are all just fitness exercises. They're just one step above cones on a field. So I'm not too worried either way. I don't get the highs or the lows on this. I will say that it's nice to see the players enjoying playing soccer. Aubameyang looked happy, from
Yeah.
the goals and the celebrations and the passing. Pepe looked sharp and happy. To put some wicked rumors in, I thought it was very interesting that when the goals were scored, the French-speaking players all like ran to each other and hugged each other, and didn't really. It was interesting that it was Emile Smith-Rowe that got an assist on one of those goals, and they all went and hugged the French-speaking players, and he kind of just like stayed off by himself. But that's just Tim's wicked rumors. So
I think that goal was actually the Chambers goal, where Emile Smith-Rowe was kind of just like in front of the goal to tap it in if it needed it. But I think it was Chambers that actually scored. But I don't know. I didn't see what happened as far as the celebration went with that one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, but like at the end of the days, I'm just excited to see players excited to play soccer again, and hopefully we can see more of that. We're not even at the sharp end of preseason, so like
we're getting there though. I did just pull up the schedule here, and we're down to our last two, and they are both Premier League preseason matches. So we've got Chelsea and Tottenham coming up.
There's going to be at least one more, if not two more, rescheduled games from what they missed at the Florida games. So like there are a couple more preseason games as well added on.
I'm curious where they're going to squeeze those in. I mean, they certainly will try to do that. Sunday is the Chelsea game, so they could potentially squeeze in a game before Sunday, and then the following Sunday is going to be the Tottenham match. Yeah. So there is a possibility of getting one or two in between those games.
Well, I mean,
we'll have to wait and see.
You have to remember that it's not like actual games. They're not playing at full speed, so you can play more than one game a week,
Yeah, but I expect like by the time, I think the expectation was if everything had gone to plan, that by the time you got to these last two games, you would be playing Premier League level matches, hopefully close to full speed at this point, because you're getting into your last couple weeks before it actually kicks off. So I would expect by the time they get to at least the Tottenham game, they'll be up to full speed, and maybe even up, maybe even with Chelsea this weekend. But if they're sprinkling in some lesser competition in between, they can afford to kind of rotate and get other guys some minutes. And like the rotations with all these games they're trying to get everybody a little bit of time, so it's not like you're having any worry of tired legs or anything like that. So I'm sure they can squeeze in and still push the level up a little bit more.
But I mean, we've been talking about all this transfer rumors because it is the silly season and all that. But if you're talking about, like trying to get to full game speed by the Tottenham game, do you think even the lineup is set at this point? Do you think Arteta knows what he's doing with the squad at this point and knows what essentially he's going to be playing with, even if we bring in one or even two people?
I think he's got a lot of the pieces. There's certainly a couple question marks, but I don't think it would leave a lot. I think the Ben White piece, once that's in place, assuming that happens, that's kind of like the last big piece. I think you could start the season with that team and feel pretty good about where it's going. And if you're able to get a couple other deals across the line before the window closes, that's like icing on the cake. But I think you could start the season feeling pretty solid about what the team is once you get that center back role filled.
So I'm going to throw you a bone and say Ben White is going to get signed, right? We'll just count that as official. What's your starting lineup first day of the season then?
Well, I guess the other part we don't know is if there's going to be any delay of players coming back to the starting lineup. Like, will Saka be starting against Brentford, or is he going to come off the bench and work his way up to full fitness a little bit later than everybody else.
I'll just throw it. I just like the ideal starting lineup. If everyone is fit and the squad is what it is, what is your starting lineup? And do you think that's a Premier League winning lineup? Would be the follow-up question.
Okay. So I think you got Leno, obviously, Tierney, Gabriel, White. Right back is a big question mark with the Bellerin situation. Assuming they are able to get a loan for him, I think I would put Chambers as the starting right back, honestly. Then Party, and then the Xhaka situation, we'll have to wait and see what happens there. But if it's not Xhaka, it's probably Elneny, which is concerning. But, you know, he'll hold that position down, I think. Then, yeah, I think you've got Saka, Emile Smith-Rowe, Pepe, with Aubameyang up front.
Does that win the Premier League?
I'm not trying to win this year. I honestly don't think I don't think that is a winning team. I think that's a top 5 team.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with you. I think that lineup is very much what we're going to see the first couple games. I think I do expect to see Xhaka there, and I'm not necessarily sad about it in a lot of ways. I think he might get more stick than he deserves. And yeah, it's a top 5. It's not going to compete with City or even what Man United has been doing and kind of their new signings, but I think it can compete for a Champions League spot. And I think that team, that if that's the team that starts and is like our average team throughout the year, I'd be disappointed to finish out of the Champions League spots.
Yeah, I think United, City, and Chelsea will probably be in that top tier, vying for the Premier League title. Liverpool, I have no clue what they're gonna do, how they're gonna look this season. So I put them kind of in that next tier down, vying for the next 3 or 4 spots. I think Arsenal, Tottenham. I'm missing somebody. Who am I forgetting here?
Leicester.
Yeah, they'll be in that mix.
They'll be on that tier. Although some of their players are getting a little old. I'm gonna put out a weird prediction here, and this is not my Arsenal tinted glasses. I think Tottenham's gonna have a tough year this year. They just don't. They're not impressing. They have a new manager. I'm not impressed with the players or their signings so far. So I think we'll be vying with Leicester and Liverpool for that final 4th Champions League spot.
Where do you put Everton this year with Benitez coming in? You think they're in that mix, or they got some growing pains?
They've got some growing pains. I at the end of the day, again with my non-Arsenal glasses on, I do have a lot of time today for Benitez. I think he is a very good manager. I think he gets a lot of shit that he doesn't deserve. That Everton lineup is a little bit hard, and I mean, I genuinely rate a lot of our players well above that Everton level. So it's going to be a lot of coaching up for Benitez. I could see them in it, just like I could see a couple of teams in it. But as far as on paper, pre-season expectations, they're going to be at that lower end of that second tier for sure, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's still going to be a difficult road ahead for Arsenal, and it's hard to feel like they've made a significant amount of improvement from the signings that they've made so far. They've addressed needs, but they haven't necessarily improved the first team enough, and that may be concerning overall if this is the team that's going to start the Premier League.
Yeah, and it is an interesting worry. I always find myself fighting this. We've had this discussion a million times about whether what I want Arsenal to be, because
Mm-hmm.
at a certain extent, for Arsenal to compete with Man City, we're going to have to spend Man City money, and I don't know if I'm comfortable with that as a fan, as a human being in soccer. I don't know if I'm comfortable with that. So I don't know. I'm feeling more optimistic. I do like the signings we made so far. Like Lukonga,
Mm-hmm.
like we're signing into a youth program, and I do appreciate that. I think the dangers of that is that being a youth program, there's a very low floor to what can happen, you know?
It is definitely a switch from the win now sort of signings that we were making. And I can get behind that. I want that, but I don't know if the fan base is ready to struggle. Like I think I'm not saying we have a bad team. I just think there are, when you're putting more emphasis on the younger players, when you're relying more on unproven players, you are going to have um, higher highs because your expectations might be a little bit lower. But you also have to expect there to be some rough patches. And I'm not saying like rough patches like the first half of last season, but it for as many highs there are probably going to be as many lows. I think it's just going to be a little bit more um I don't know, a little bit more of everything.
You say not like the first half of last season, and I'm hoping that's not the case. But that I in the realms of possibility, I'm not putting out of out of that realms what happened at the first half of last season. Like I there could very well be a very, very, very rough patch for us this season.
I would say my expectations have gone from what I would consider that period to be was consistently pretty bad to where our average will probably be consistently mediocre.
Yeah.
Like that, probably vying more for that middle of the pack than relegation spots. I think we have to keep in mind that was what the conversation was. I mean, we were in just above that relegation zone, and we were just as likely to go down that direction than we were to rebound. I kind of expect us more to be maybe not necessarily in the top tier all season long, but at least kind of that 10th and up, vying for that top half than 10th and below. That's kind of where I place us based on the team that we have right now.
I think that's a realistic assessment of it. I think you hit the nail on the head with your assessment of it.
But if they are ambitious and there are deals to be had, I could see one or two signings definitely making that being like a sixth and above. Like it only takes a couple guys to really push up that expectation level a little bit. So if they were to go out and make a splashy signing, I might change my tune.
And it's not even just splashy signings, but it's about I always look at players as like roof and ceiling, right? You have the low end of a player and the high end of a player. And some of our players, if you start hitting that high end, if Saka hits his high end, if Emile Smith-Rowe hits his high end, if Aubameyang gets back to not even his high end, but his like attic level, I guess you could say, as far as roof and ceiling. If Gabriel even just as mid range, like if you have a couple players that start hitting their high ends of what we expect, then that is a whole nother conversation. It's just we have to be used to the fact that we have players that have much higher variance than when you look at a City, where the difference between the roof and the floor of their players is a very smaller level than where our roof and the ceilings are for our players.
Mm-hmm. I was going to save this question for after a break, but I think we should just keep talking because I don't want to ruin a good conversation here. If the season started next week, before all the dominoes fell, if Arsenal had to go out and make one more signing, what area do you think they would? I guess what is the biggest area of need in your mind, or where do you see the biggest potential to improve?
I mean, I mentioned this earlier, which is that I'm going to contradict a lot of what I said earlier with that. I think we need a creative midfielder. I think that is the biggest need and area. And if we sign someone in that, I think we would have a pretty good team, even without the Ben White signing coming through.
Mm-hmm. I It's hard not knowing what the outgoings are, because I think that would change the conversation a bit. Like if Xhaka does leave, I don't like the idea of starting the season with uh, Sambi and Elneny being the dual partnership to Party, and that those three players being our core of our midfield pairing is not ideal in my mind. But I don't like the thinness at the creative midfield level either. So I think one way, whether it's defensive or on the offensive end, I think our midfield still needs one more signing at least. If Xhaka leaves, I feel like that is a hole that has to be filled in my mind. But I don't think that is something they should necessarily break the bank on, because they did spend good money on Party. They do have Sambi there to grow into that role. I feel like it could be a $20 to $30 million signing, and I'd feel okay with that. Maybe somebody a little bit younger than Party, a little bit older than Sambi, and just kind of have those tiers of like, these are the guys we're going to build around for the next few years. We're going to let these guys develop. We're going to kind of have some security there. But I think at this point in the window, you have to kind of go with what becomes available. And the way this window is going, it's what's palatable for ownership to bite the bullet on after you've made a $50 million center back signing and you're not making any sales. Is there really anybody you can go after that makes sense for the money you're able to spend? And that's a tough calculation without having any outgoings so far.
What do you feel about, and this is something I'm thinking about, but what do you feel about our forward situation where we have two players that are older at the end of, or one of them's at the end of his contract, and then you have a very, very, very young player, and then a couple players that are known quantities?
People were just hating on the Tammy Abraham rumor, but to me that made a ton of sense to find somebody in that of that quality and that age. Like, Balogun's still very young and unproven, so I wouldn't want to put a ton of pressure on him. So the drop off, you've got Martinelli, who's young and somewhat still has to prove himself. Like, he's got a ton of potential, but not consistency yet. I think you do need somebody that's in their early to mid 20s that has proven themselves, and I think that's Tammy Abraham. And if it's not him, somebody like that. And there's not too many people that are like that. So the people that were scoffing at signing another Chelsea player, if you strip away that Chelsea label and just look at the player, I think that is exactly the type of thing we should be looking at.
Do you think we're giving players like Nketiah and the other strikers that we're willing to throw away short shrift, that maybe they do fill a role in Arsenal?
I still go back to Nketiah and think that he hasn't done enough with the time he's been given, because it's not like he hasn't had chances. I just think that what he does bring, the type of player that he is not necessarily something that Arsenal need. A player who scores a ton of goals from within the 6-yard box is not. We don't play that way to take full advantage of that. Lacazette is a type of player. Aubameyang is a type of player. So if you're trying to like have a toolbox of a bunch of different strikers that can do different things, I get that that Nketiah could fill one of those roles, but it's not necessarily something that plays to the strengths of the other players that would be setting him up. We just don't play enough that close to goal to really take advantage of what he does. So I would rather go get somebody that has that same level of potential, but plays to the strengths of the players around him a little bit more.
And then with the depth of Arsenal, like I know we always talk about these starters that we want to fill in, but where are the depth that we need to fill in? Or do you think we've got a pretty good depth chart once we put in some of these starters?
I do want more depth behind Emile Smith-Rowe. I would love to see. I'd like to just have a clear vision of what the right back situation is. We've got like three, like not necessarily. We have tons of depth there, but it's not clear who the number one is, especially if Bellerin does go. You've got three guys who could potentially play as a starter, but I wouldn't feel comfortable with going into the season with Cedric as the number one. Ainsley Maitland-Niles doesn't want to be the number one, so that leaves Chambers, and he was a revelation last season, but I don't know the longevity of him as a right back. It's just going to take time. So maybe you just give him that spot and say it's yours until it's not, like you can, if you keep doing well, you keep your position. And if not, we've got guys that can play. But he puts in a good cross. He's good at getting up and down the field. So he checks a lot of the boxes. I think of all the things that we have to go out and get, I don't know that I would put a ton of money into going out and getting another right back if Bellerin does leave, because you do have the backup goalkeeper position that, if the rumors that are out there, they're looking at Ramsdale, they're asking 30 million or more for him, and that doesn't make any sense financially, even if he is a homegrown. It totally screws up your whatever situation you have with Leno, because you're putting all this money into somebody who's clearly going to be the next goalkeeper. It's just it's too messy for me. I would rather go out and get a 20 million or less goalkeeper to back up Leno and let that situation play out as it should. Let Leno play out his contract, or go another year, and then if the next guy's ready to step up, great. If not, we go out and get a different guy. I think you have to put some decent money into it, because you don't want the huge drop off that we had, like when Runerson had to come in. Like you kind of want somebody who's in between. I guess Okwango is our third back for our third goalkeeper for this season. So you want somebody who's kind of tiered below Leno but above Okwango. You want somebody who's established themselves but isn't necessarily a first choice keeper yet. But that's going to cost you money, especially if you're going to have to go out and get a homegrown type player. So that might be a situation where I think, looking at the depth of all of our positions, that is one of the clear positions we have to go out and get somebody in this window, I think, because I don't think there is anybody that's going to be a number two at this point.
I mean, it's hard with number two keepers, because when I play FIFA or when I play Football Manager, number two keeper is where I put least amount of my money, because in reality, unless there's the tragic that happens, which happens every once in a while, but when they're not going to see you play. Like, I think Chelsea had that like magic thing when they had Hilario Gomez as their backup to Czech, which is, Czech was never injured until he got his horrific injury. And Hilario Gomez was very happy collecting a paycheck sitting on the bench. And we saw that. We had that for a little while with why am I forgetting his name? As soon as they leave Arsenal, I forget the name. Plays for West Ham now.
Emmy Martinez.
Emmy Martinez. And we had that situation where we had a great number 2 on the bench, but the problem with having a great number 2 on the bench is they want to play, and if they're not playing, they want to get sold.
Mm-hmm.
So I would be very, very frightened to put even 20 million on a backup keeper, especially because we sold Emmy for 14. Like
we got 20 for him.
Oh, 20.
I mean, it would essentially be reinvesting that money back into another player, but I don't know that you're going to find somebody of that quality.
Yeah.
And I wonder what the long-term plan is for this Leno situation. I would think they would go out and get somebody that could potentially be the number 1 within a year or two. But how many people can you go out and find that are also homegrowns that you can get for less than 20 million? When you start putting all these conditions in, it really narrows things down. And once people know that you have these conditions, they can just jack up the price. I think that's kind of what the Ramsdale situation is.
I mean, and that's exactly it. And to be honest, I'd rather have a Runarsson, which, again, is a very, 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 very low floor. And we've seen some of that low, almost basement level floor. But there's this idea that he does have a high ceiling. And we've seen, 2 games of his. Mm-hmm. and that's harsh to judge any player on. And I think that's the type of backup that we want. I just don't want to spend. I wouldn't want to spend more than 10 million on a backup keeper.
Yeah, I think 20 would be if you had somebody that was a clear player for the future. And anything less than that, or anybody that is not of that quality, you probably shouldn't spend more than 15 on for your backup.
Yeah, if that.
It has to be an heir apparent sort of situation where they're vying. They're going to be pushing Leno and vying for that first team spot within a year or two.
Which I'm fine with. I do think competitions for spots are good, and competition for goalkeeping spots is a good thing to a certain extent, but. There are a lot more positions I'd rather spend that 15 to 20 million on than backup keeper, which there may be a whole season where they don't play,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I wish we would have just gotten Matt Ryan and signed him to a longer term deal and called it good. Cause he was serviceable. That was fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Could have just kicked this can a little bit longer.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Let Leno do his thing.
That's the problem with kicking the can. Eventually, you have to collect him.
Yeah. Well, I to me, I guess that when you're looking at where the glaring needs are, we have a big gaping hole at that backup goalkeeper position. So I would expect that's going to get addressed somehow, because we can't go into the season with our supposed third string keeper stepping up into that second string. I just don't think he's ready yet. So I do imagine that once the center back thing gets done, you got to sort out the goalkeeper situation and then kind of see where the outgoings put you, because that's going to be a decider of where you need to put your effort into replacing, or kind of tell you what kind of money you have to play with.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that what happens with Xhaka, what happens with Bellerin are going to be very informative to how the rest of the pieces fall into play.
Do you see anybody on the team right now making a surprise, being a surprise sale as far as bringing in funds, or do you I imagine a lot of loans and low-level sales coming from the team?
I mean, if you want my crazy prediction, I could see Lacazette going if the price is right. Because I think his services are in need for a lot of other teams, and he's getting towards the end of his contract.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can get some money for him, I think that sale makes sense. Not that I necessarily endorse it, but I could see that coming.
I think my only problem with losing Lacazette is that we don't really have anybody who can do what he does. Even if you did make the Tammy Abraham deal happen, that's not the kind of player he is either. So finding somebody who can hold up the ball and that you can play off of and can relieve pressure, that's a tough thing to replace. And I think even like Xhaka is another type that is not easy to replace. But I feel like with the Xhaka situation, we already know that we can play differently and kind of find a different type of player that we can work around. But I do feel like with the striker situation, it is like a toolbox. You want different types for different situations, and so not having a like for likes swap available makes that a little bit tougher, because good strikers are just hard to come by and they're going to cost you usually. So it is if he did go last minute, we weren't able to replace him, that would put us in a real tough spot, because even if Martinelli stepped up and had a great season, all of a sudden that's not the type of player he is. I would put him more akin to what Aubameyang brings us, and I'm not sure what kind of player Balogun is yet, but I don't expect him to have a huge role either, even though like Martinelli had sparks and has had good games from time to time at a young age. I don't expect Balogun to have a ton to do without European competition. So it might take him a lot longer to develop.
So what's your surprise move of the offseason? Who could you see leaving on the last minute deadline deal?
That is tough. I kind of think the I would kind of lean with you that Lacazette, even though there has not been a lot of rumors, I just feel like because there aren't a ton of strikers out there who are in that position, contract wise and age wise. I feel like there will be teams that need strikers that'll look at him and go, that's like low hanging fruit. Like he's maybe at the end of his career, so he's not going to have like a huge, well, maybe he has huge contract demands, but I mean, like he's not going to fetch a fee that he would have like a couple years ago. So it's going to be less than what he got his last contract with us. So it could be appealing when all the other dominoes start falling. There's only so many strikers available out there that are established, and he's had good goal numbers, not amazing, but he's been consistent. And so I think he could be appealing to some people.
I mean, he's not a Haaland. He's not going to score Haaland numbers, but he's not going to score that much less than Haaland. Like, he is going to score goals.
Mm-hmm.
You can guarantee that, and there is a premium for a striker that will score goals.
I just the one downside, I think he would be a great fit to go back to France, but that league is so messed up. I don't know if anybody could even afford that. So I don't know if that's a possibility for him.
Yeah, I don't know. But you know, more to the point, like another side of the question that you originally asked, I don't think there's a lot of surprise selling that would come from Arsenal. I think we're at a point where we can't afford to sell some of these players that would have value, you know, because I think Leno has value, but I don't think we can afford to sell Leno at this point. You know, we could probably get Saka for a price, but we can't afford to sell Saka. Like, we can't afford to sell Aubameyang at this point. Like, there are a lot of players on our team that we just, if we have ambitions to try and make it to the Champions League, we can't afford to sell. So,
yeah, I think a lot of teams are in that same position where it's like, yeah, great, we could, even if we have suitors for some of these, there's no easy way, there's no ready-made replacements, because there's the market's so flat that there's just not a lot available to go out and replace these players with. So even if you could sell some of these, it's just you're going to get left in the lurch. So you don't even want to contemplate selling some of these players because it would just impact the team so much if you didn't have a ready-made replacement available. I don't think Arsenal can afford that. I don't think we're trying to build something here, and getting rid of some of these unneeded players is going to be hard enough.
Exactly. And, as you said, I don't think Arsenal could afford much leeway in that. So,
yeah, I'm hopeful that they can find homes for some of these fringe players, whether they be, there are a few players like get Nketiah some more game time. Like I don't mind if that's a player like that who hasn't maybe found his way in our team goes out on loan, because I do think he has a skill set that is marketable and is potentially good for Arsenal in the future, but it's not apparent right now what he can do for us or what he's going to do for us. So get him game time somewhere. Yeah. And there's a few players that could fit that role.
And on a personal level, I want these players to fulfill their ambitions. Like I want like Nketiah to have a happy soccer life as long as he doesn't sign for Tottenham. Like I want them to fulfill their dreams. And I think some of these players are just not going to hit it at Arsenal,
Yeah, there are a lot of. We just have a lot of players, and we brought in a few more. So it's. Somebody has to go out. We've got to make way. I mean, another name that I forget about is Joe Willock. I imagine they will find a way to get him back at Newcastle, but I don't know. I don't think Newcastle's going to pay for him. I think it's going to be another loan situation, if anything.
That's the weird thing is Newcastle wants him, or Steve Bruce wants him. Like when you talk about Newcastle, you have to differentiate from the manager and the owner.
Yeah.
And he's basically, Steve Bruce said, is in Arsenal's court, and I think Arsenal's saying like, no, it's on your court. If you want to pay the money, he's available. Like, and I think that's another situation where I think the owner just isn't willing to invest anymore. He wants out of that club so badly that he's not going to invest in a player like that.
Yeah. There are so many, I just pulled up the team lineup right now, and there's so many players I just forget about. It's sad. Two players that came to mind, Lucas Torreira and Kolasinac.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. I mean, Torreira clearly doesn't want to be in Arsenal anymore. He would much rather be anywhere else.
Yeah.
But he's a player that needs to play. So I think he's got to find a place where they'll actually play him, Torreira, which did not work out.
I mean, we're talking about where our shortcomings are. And if you're talking about depth in that midfield, Torreira is that depth piece. So I could see him getting matches and staying. Kolasinac should go. If Kolasinac wants to get game time, he needs to leave Arsenal. And that's just unfortunately that. But I can see Torreira getting some game time with us, especially if we don't make that signing in midfield.
Yeah, he would be. I think he would be all right, but I don't know if he seems like he's in a tough mental spot, and I don't know if that's easily fixed with Arsenal. Yeah. I think he's over it and ready to get anywhere else and start fresh. And that seems, from all indications, it seems like that's all he wants is just a move elsewhere. I mean, but I don't know if anybody's willing to spend the money on him right now.
At a certain point, if he really wants to get away from Arsenal, he has to start maybe putting in some performances for Arsenal, and we can sell him in the transfer window or something like that.
Yeah.
There's a certain point where, like, yeah, you want to get away, but if you're not showing, no one's going to want to buy you. And, if you don't show and if you don't play for a while, you're going to drop off everybody's radar, and you're going to be playing in second division Spain, which I imagine he's going to like less than playing in Arsenal.
Yeah, we've got a lot of fringe players that just need homes. So there will probably be a flurry of loans, and hopefully loans with obligations attached to them, or at least some decent money coming our way to make it right in the meantime.
That is the scuttlebutt, is that loans with obligations is going to be the new signing. That, like, everyone's trying to kick the can off till a couple years when things, at least monetary streams, get back to normal.
Yes. Well, I'm hopeful that things will start ticking along here in the next week or two. I'm not sure when the window actually closes. Is it end of August?
I forget the exact date, but it's going to be several weeks into the season. So, so we'll have a couple games to assess some of these players and how much we really still want them here.
Yeah. Let's see here. The last. Oh, can somebody give me?
No, the internet's
no. There's never direct answers to my questions.
I mean, to be fair, we probably, as podcast hosts, should be researching these before the podcast.
No, but I have ideas as I go along. It's never something I think about beforehand.
No, I never do. I pull up all these tabs. I have about 5 worthless tabs in this conversation because I pull up all these tabs as if I knew where the conversation is going to go, and it never goes where I think it's going to go.
Well, the next piece of technology we need is, as you're talking in a podcast, to have a browser window that listens to what you're saying and predictably pulls up tabs with information that you need.
I mean, the next technology is going to be robots that take over the podcast and just...
Oh, yeah. Who needs us?
Yeah, exactly.
Here we go. Tuesday, August 31st is when the window closes. So some time still to go, but we're creeping towards the last month. I kind of wonder if it's going to go down to the last couple weeks, really.
Oh, it definitely is. I guarantee it's like, I think the end of the transfer window is going to be the most interesting part of it. And I, for one, am so excited when the transfer window ends, because then we can just start talking about the real stuff as opposed to the transfers.
Yeah. The hypotheticals.
Yeah. I know a lot of people out there are all about the hypotheticals and the what ifs. I like to look what's on the ground and work with what we got.
Absolutely. I get you. Well, I think that's a good place to stop for now, and hopefully we have some more to talk about next week. It seems like Arsenal's just letting stuff trickle out, so maybe we'll get another signing this week and then have that to talk about, and then maybe if we just do one big thing a week, that'll be enough to keep us going until this really starts kicking off. But for now, Emile Smith-Rowe's good enough for me.
Exactly.
That's real. It's
real, and I like it. So, yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you all for listening to this week's episode. We appreciate you sticking around through thick and thin. If you haven't subscribed or reviewed the podcast, go ahead and do so wherever you pick up your podcast every week. If you prefer to watch instead of listen, we do have a YouTube channel, and you can see our lovely faces in live, and well, not live. We're working on live. Someday we'll be live, but for right now, you can see recordings of the podcast. West of North London is what you can search on YouTube and find us there. If you would rather just follow us on Twitter, if you have to follow us somewhere, you get to choose. Twitter's another option for you. At W of N London is where you can follow us. And if you want to send us questions there, that's fantastic. If you want to send us questions at our email address, that would be westofnorthlondon@gmail.com. And if you want to get real crazy and send in a voicemail, it's anchor.fm/westofnorthlondon/message. We'd love to hear from you via message as well. And if you like our theme song, Bobcat is the name of the band. Their album is No Course to Follow. And if you want to get more information and find much more about the band, their website is bobc.at. And all that and much more can be found there. So I believe we've reached the end of the line here. So as always,
See you at the next gun show.